everybody loves the tank? I'm not sure I get it. Next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 bum.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked on Jazz. Today, the love of the tank, the picking of a lane. It's got to be this lane. It's got to be this lane. And this lane is only seemingly to me to be the tank. Why? Why do we love the tank? Didn't the Spurs do this and have great success? But they didn't trade their version of Lauri Markkanen to do it. Cooper Flagg compared to a former Jazz player. And another NBA exec says he doesn't think Cooper Flagg is the number one pick of this draft. That's all coming up on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. As I mentioned, I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps and on YouTube. So please subscribe. 5-star reviews are greatly appreciated. If you're on YouTube, hit that bell button. I told you I wanted to get our subscriber number up higher on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button right now and join the channel so I want to get that over 50%. I think that would be cool. Today's show is brought to you in part by our friends over at FanDuel. Make every moment more. As we've wound down the playoffs and the sports season, we've now got a little games going on. We've got MLB, and FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost of a bonus daily. That's right. Something for everyone every day, all summer long at FanDuel.com. And everydayers, you're the best. Thank you so much for asking. By the way, everyone keeps asking about this. Okay. Wait, this. Got in a fight with the air fryer and lost. Have some golfer's elbow and doing some cupping. So that's what those marks are. If you're on YouTube, you know what that was. If you're on audio, I have funny marks on my arm. All right. Yesterday I talked about like the idea of picking a lane and the Jazz having to pick a lane, and at least the way I'm hearing it, and some people disagreed in the YouTube comments, we'll probably dig into those more tomorrow, is that every time somebody says pick a lane, they just mean tank. So I get it. On the surface, it means that we go get one of the seemingly next best players in the league. What's interesting to me about this is I don't actually see this like track record that tells me that the tank works that well. So the first thing is, if we go to yes, you have to have a top 10, a top 20, and a top 50 player in this league to win. Okay? There's no question. So if we go to the top 10 players in the league, Jokic is not a tank. Doncic could be, right? He was the third pick of a draft. Should have been the first pick of the draft. And Dallas for a year wasn't. Giannis was not a tank. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was not a tank. Jason Tatum was a pick by Boston with Brooklyn's pick. Joel Embiid was the process. Yes, so there's two. Steph was not a tank. Anthony Edwards was a number one pick, but if I remember correctly, that's a lottery win, not a tank. And so, yes, some of the best players in the league. Anthony Davis is probably right in there at 10th. He was a number one pick of a draft by New Orleans, which was a lottery win, not a tank. So, yes, the best players in the league are drafted at the front of the draft. It's undeniable. If you want the hits, like we've talked about a million times, yes. But I'm not sure that the tank is the answer here. Minnesota, if that was a tank that got them Anthony Edwards, then maybe this is going to turn out when they've also had it coupled with another number one pick in the likes of, they went 19 and 45 in that shortened season. And then I think they get Anthony Edwards in that draft. Okay. So that one's close to saying like, oh, now I don't know that I think that was a tank, frankly. Like, I don't know that was what Minnesota totally meant to do. They were 13th in the I think that year that they were 14th in the West. They went into the draft, if I remember correctly, the Warriors had a worse record than them. And they had the same thing with Cleveland. So they went in that draft with a third possibility, and they end up with Anthony Edwards. That one's pretty close to saying, like, there's if you want, I'm giving you your ammunition. By the way, if you want to say, like, hey, there's the tank. Anthony Edwards, number one pick, becoming the best player in Minnesota, might be your answer. But some of the other examples that people give on the tank, and Joel Embiid in the process, when Philadelphia went full tank, and which is kind of what made this in vogue, but I'm not sure has actually been successful. So Philadelphia went full tank and won 19, 18, 10, and 28 games in a 4-year period of time and have never made the Eastern Conference Finals. Never made the Eastern Conference Finals. Have never won more than 54 games. 54 is good. Have only won 50 games 4 times. Drafted Jahlil Okafor, Ben Simmons, Dario Saric, and Joel Embiid. On 4 picks, they got 1. Like, the New Orleans Pelicans got Anthony Edwards with a number 1 pick of a draft, which was great because Anthony Edwards is great. He then obviously wanted to leave. I don't believe that they ever lost more than 30 games in that stretch. Maybe they lost 27 one year that got them Anthony Edwards. That was probably when they were the New Orleans Hornets instead of the New Orleans Pelicans. But I think that's right. That they may have lost 21. They went 21-45 in a shortened season. So that's like the 26, 27 wins. And in the 2011-12 season, and that gets them, I believe, the draft pick that gets them Anthony Edwards. But if you go back and look at that, they were the fourth worst record in the NBA. So maybe. Okay. Those are but like Oklahoma City is a team that everyone talks to me about the tank. That's not a tank. They got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in a trade. If they just had Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams, they would have another 20 losses coming. Or 20 wins coming. Like, Shai's great. Shai's the key to that whole thing. That they got Shai in the trade. And then if you remember, they get Shai and then they just sit him down. He plays, if I remember correctly, fairly healthy 35 and 56 games in the next 2 years to make sure they don't win games. The one that's interesting to me on this when it gets to Lauri Markkanen and what the Jazz should do with Lauri Markkanen is the Spurs, who are the greatest tankers of all time. Okay, so if we go back to the San Antonio Spurs and what is the most successful tank in the history of the NBA is the Tim Duncan year, right? So they go, Greg Popovich takes over and they go 20, they win 62, 59, and then they go 20 and 62, and then they get Tim Duncan, and Tim Duncan becomes one of the 10 greatest players in the history of the NBA, and it carries them for just this incredible run of 5 championships and brilliance. But the key to their tank is that the team that Tim Duncan walked onto had David Robinson, had Sean Elliott, had a bunch of decent players, 2 great ones right there. They got better. Vinny Del Negro's on the team was actually pretty good at the time, and so was Avery Johnson. But that's the key to that tank. The same way that the key to the Oklahoma City tank is that Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams are walking onto a team with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So we can find case in points where some of this has worked. Anthony Edwards walks onto a team with Karl Anthony Towns. Anthony Davis walked onto a team with Drew Holiday, or they acquired Drew Holiday shortly thereafter. It probably should work, but to some extent, maybe the Anthony Davis example is the other way. That Anthony Davis joined a team in 2011, 2012 with Eric Gordon and not many other players. I think like one of their best players was Vasquez at the time, was not much of an NBA player. And and he eventually gets sour and wants to leave. But the tank into an empty cupboard, I can start doing this the other way, which I will in a second, which is looking at all the teams that have tried that, and then it's ugly. We'll look at that next as we continue on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you on this Wednesday edition by my good friends over at Intercap Lending. Steve Carter is our own personal loan officer. I love Steve Carter because, frankly, we've been suggesting people to go to Steve Carter for now, we're probably up to like 8 years, and every single time it's an incredible experience, and it continues to be for a multitude of our viewers recently. That's because Intercap is doing something really great right now, and that is if you're considering building a new home, they have a game-changing offer for you. New construction loan program. You can defer all interest payments during the construction phase. Yes, you heard that right. No payments until your home is ready. But that's not all. They offer flexible underwriting to cater to your unique financial situation, making it easier for you to get approved. And speaking of approval, you'll love this. The quick decision-making process means that on average, you get approved in 3 to 4 weeks. That's practically unheard of in the industry. And guess what? They offer loan amounts up to $3 million, giving you the flexibility to build the home of your dreams without financial constraints. So if you're ready to turn your dream home into reality, check out Intercap Lending's new construction loan program. As always, give Steve Carter at Intercap Lending a call, 385-800-8528, or just email me directly at dlocks09@gmail.com. That's dlocks09@gmail.com, and I'll get you connected to Steve. Incredible opportunity. Happy building. Locked on listeners, you get the VIP treatment that is unique to just our good friend, Steve Carter. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The sports world is slowing down ever so slightly, and so FanDuel still has all the fun and exciting for you. So here's what FanDuel is doing for you. All customers get a boost or bonus daily. That's right. For everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com, make the most of your summer. All the Major League Baseball deals were made yesterday. By the way, we've covered all of them for you. And so it makes you wonder, after all of those deals, who do you think are the favorites now in Major League Baseball to make the big jumps and get the future odds on Major League Baseball? Do you have a team that you think made the big move that's going to make all the difference? Here are the Major League Baseball futures. The Dodgers are still plus 300 to win the World Series. Phillies plus 500, Yankees plus 550, Orioles plus 600, Braves at 1,200, and Astros at plus 1,300. The AL winner, Yankees plus 250, Orioles plus 270, Dodgers plus 150, and Phillies plus 230, with the Braves at plus 550 and the Guardians at plus 650 there for you on the MLB, the Cy Young in the American League. Good little battle between Corbin Burns and Tariq Scoba going on in the Cy Young over at the National League. Chris Sale and Paul Skankus are going back and forth on that one as the two leading vote getter or odds makers there. The American League MVP, Aaron Judge, seemingly running away with it, and the NL MVP, Shohei Ohtani, seemingly running away with it. Go check it all out at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Thanks so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. For your second listen, check out the Big 6 and 60 yesterday, recapping 6 major Major League Baseball trade deals. It's the 6 biggest stories that exist. By the way, tomorrow, this is big news. Tomorrow on Amazon Fire, News On, Zine, and YouTube, we'll be launching our first ever sports-centric 24/7 channels. An NFL channel and a college sports channel. Locked on College Football, Locked on College Basketball, I think we'll be streaming them. Or Locked on College Football will be streaming them. And Locked on NFL on YouTube will be 24/7 streams of an NFL-only channel and a college sports-only channel. So kind of cool. All right. So we just talked about that. Hey, yeah, there's some players in the top 10 that make you want to say tank. And then there's some teams that seemingly have kind of maybe, like Minnesota, maybe, but they had Karl-Anthony Towns in the house when it worked. So who's done, if we were to trade Lauri Markkanen, which we still may do, if we were to trade Lauri Markkanen and we would really empty the barrel and go to the bottom to get the draft picks and do the tank, who's done this and had it work? What's the model that everyone says this is so great about that makes so many people seem to want to do this? So, I mean, we can run through the franchises. Atlanta in 2017 won 24, and then in 18 they won 29, and then in 19-20 they won 20, and they in 4 years haven't won more than 41 games since. The Charlotte Hornets, I mean, when did it start? In 2019, they won 23, then 33, then they went up to 43. Now they're down to 27 and back to 21. That's their last 5 years. Aren't they kind of tanking? They have the most grandiose tank of all time. They won 7 games in 2011-12. Then they won 21, and then they got to 43. In 1 year, they got to 48. But they have not won a single playoff series since their first tank in 2004. The Charlotte Hornets tanked in 2004. They won 18 games. The next year they won 26. The next year they won 33. The next year they won 32. They won 18 games in 2004, 2005. And they have not won a playoff series since. Like, okay. They got Raymond Felton for that tank, by the way. That's the Darren Williams, Raymond Felton, Chris Paul draft. We're talking about they haven't won a playoff game since. The Chicago Bulls did one of the most outrageous tanks of all time. It was right after they won the NBA Finals. They ripped the entire team together. They won 13, 17, 15, and 21 games. And they proceeded over the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years to win a playoff series. A playoff series. 1. In the 8 years after their 4-year tank. They got to the Eastern Conference Finals under Tom Thibodeau with a pretty good team in 2011-12, and then Derrick Rose gets hurt and falls apart. But that was their tank. They tanked for 4 years and won a playoff series in 8 of them. Like, where's the track record on this? The Cleveland Cavaliers got LeBron, right? And then re-tanked and got LeBron back in free agency and won the finals. Okay. Since then have tanked again, 19, 19, 22. They seemingly are on the upward trajectory because they traded for Donovan. They made some good picks with Evan Mobley. They got Darius Garland. We'll see. They're 6 years in. They've won a playoff series. A playoff series. Last year. The Detroit Pistons were great. Ran it out. Won 27, 30, 25, 29. Not full tanks, but like pretty bad. They haven't won a playoff series since 2007, 2008. Their last years are 2020, 23, 17, and 14. Like, where is the track record that this works? The Houston Rockets are in the middle of it right now. How do you feel about where they are? Because they undid it and they went down to 3 years in a row at 17, 20, and 22. That's what we're talking about tanking. They got 41 wins last year. And they are projected to not make the play-in this year. They are projected to be 11th in the West this year. So my point is that Oklahoma City's got Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams after a bunch of other misses, but they really got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who they got in a trade, who they kept on their roster and they held. The Spurs did it with Tim Duncan because they had a full roster. The Jazz have Lauri Markkanen. The Jazz have tried to go get another big game hunting type player. We keep hearing that phrase, and they have failed at doing so on the ability to get the deal done, to get Kristaps Porzingis, to get Drew Holiday, to get Mikal Bridges. Which begs the question, if you have Lauri Markkanen and you can't get a similar player to him, why would you possibly trade him? It's awfully hard to go get that guy. We couldn't get Dame Lillard either, but I don't know that we really wanted him. But Lowry's a top 30 player in the NBA. Do you think that Domantas Sabonis, Kyrie Irving, Bam Adebayo, Paul George, De'Aaron Fox, Zion Williamson, Jamal Murray, Jimmy Butler, Tyrese Halliburton, Victor Wembanyama, Donovan Mitchell, Jaylen Brown, Kawhi Leonard, Devin Booker, LeBron James, Jalen Brunson, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Anthony Edwards, Steph Curry, Joel Embiid, Jason Tatum, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Giannis, Luka, or Nikola Jokic are going to become available anytime soon? Because those would be the players that I think are probably listed ahead of Lauri Markkanen in the NBA right now. And the ones that are close to him on the backside are Paulo Banchero, Jay Morant, Tyrese Maxey, Karl Anthony Towns, Pascal Siakam, Brandon Ingram, Trae Young. Yeah, Brandon Ingram and Trae Young are available. I don't think we're about to trade for Brandon Ingram or Trae Young, but they're available. So we'll see what we do. I don't know. But my point on this is, I keep hearing everyone say pick a lane, and we'll deal with some of the comments that were on YouTube because I'm sure they'll be there again today, and we'll talk about them tomorrow. That I'm like taking a shill point of view to protect the organization. I actually don't know. I don't know what the right thing to do is. But I'm not sold that the tank is the right answer. I'm not sold that that's somehow there's something disastrous to keeping Lauri Markkanen around a bunch of other young players and having them develop. Now, I think things get a little awkward with John Collins and Jordan Clarkson and how they fit. I don't think there's any question on that. Because Taylor Hendricks needs to play. Keontae George needs to play. We need to know what we have. We have 3 more first-round draft picks coming next year. We need to know what we have so we can make decisions. So Taylor's got to play. And Keontae's got to play. And probably Cody Williams got to play at some point. I don't know if Isaiah Collier's there, but maybe. But we need, and Walker's probably got to play. Walker's got to be like dramatically better than Drew Eubanks and leave no doubt he should start over John Collins. And if he doesn't, then we know something. But I'm not sure when I hear that the Jazz need to pick a lane that I totally understand what that is and why. And that's my point. Comments are welcome. I'm not like planting a flag here where I think there's no discussion or debate. The fact of the matter is, as I've shared with you, when I was in Vegas, I talked to one GM, was like, why would you possibly trade Lauri? Or one front office person, said, why would you possibly trade Lauri? He's good. And then I talked to another person who said to me, like, wow, they have the biggest pelotas in the world to not take that deal. They got to move him. And they got an amazing offer. So the league's doesn't have a consensus on it. I'm just telling you that when I hear stuff right now, I'm not sure I understand what it all means. That's my point. Cooper Flagg compared to a former Jazz player. Next on Locked on Jazz. It is Locked on Jazz. We talk Jazz each and every day for you. You flip on Locked on Jazz. You go download Locked on Jazz. You get Locked on Jazz. You know what you get? You get Utah Jazz. So if you want to hear Utah Jazz, come to Locked on Jazz every day for you, Monday through Friday. Your team every day. Guaranteed to get Jazz talk. All right. An NBA executive says that Cooper Flagg reminds him of a Jazz player, Andre Karolinko. He's very impactful defensively, can guard multiple positions, is a great weak side shot blocker. He makes plays in the half court in transition. He has a good transition as an athletic wing. He needs to shoot it better. His half court offense is a concern. Creating offense in the half court will be a question. It's interesting. It's a little different than what we've heard or what we've been portrayed. Another NBA exec, this was all on Hoops Hype. If Ace Bailey hits his ceiling, he's Paul George. If he has, after his senior season, his ceiling is the highest of the class. So a little doubt there of whether it's Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey. And what's actually interesting on that is basically the implication of these GMs or these executives, I don't know necessarily which is which, is that Cooper Flagg is far more ready defensively than he is offensively. And that Ace Bailey is far more ready offensively than defensively. More on Cooper Flagg, said the NBA exec. His defense is way ahead of his offense. This is about Cooper Flagg. He's more of a 4 than a 3 due to his supreme athletic nature. The consistency of his outside shot improving will depend on how much emphasis is put in allowing him to shoot it in real games and not just practice. On Ace Bailey, Bailey's offensively advanced, but his defense has ways to go to rival his offensive instincts. How he and Dylan Harper carry the load at Rutgers next season will speak volumes to what to be can expected as an NBA prospect. And then there's another prospect, by the way, by the name of McNeely, where an NBA scout said his ceiling is Wally Szczerbiak and his floor is Matt Harpring. By the way, Matt Harpring's daughter is taking the high school women's college basketball world by storm right now. She's on fire. I think she might have even got an offer from South Carolina. So many scouts have compared Flagg to Karolinko, and I think that's a fair assessment. I think he'll eventually be good second or third option on a really good NBA team. This was more on Cooper Flagg. His shooting stroke doesn't look great right now, but he makes a ton, and he's not afraid to take them at his size. I think he's going to eventually make more shots than people think. His best attribute right now is his defense. Overall, he can play in so many different ways. He can come over and help on defense. He can guard bigger and smaller players. He plays extremely hard with energy, and that stuff matters. With his athleticism, he can play in the pick and roll situations with the ball or as a screener. He's a versatile player. So Cooper Flagg to Andre Karolinko. More on Ace Bailey. I could see Bailey supplanting Flagg as the number one. I think Bailey is more talented with the ball than Flagg at this point, but I think Flagg is a better overall player than Bailey. Ace is more of a scoring type player. His overall decision-making, shot selection has to get a lot better. He's very wired to score. Athletically, I think there's another level he can get to, but he's still a very good athlete. Shooting-wise, I think he's more of a scorer than a natural shooter, which over time will be fine if he's your number 2 guy. I thought the same thing about Brandon Miller when he was in high school. His legs don't look great in terms of strength, but hopefully he can continue to put more weight on and be more physical. There's no doubt he's very talented. This is then where if Bailey hits the ceiling, he's Paul George. Dylan Harper is the next one who's being mentioned as the 6'6" guard, who is the son of Ron Harper, who played for the Chicago Bulls in the NBA Finals against the Jazz. And then we go to the kids out of France and some other high-level prospects in this class, which are super talented. Duke will have 2 of them. Baylor's got a player. Trey Johnson over at Texas is pretty good. And then the McNeely kid out of UConn is the one they would compare to Wally Szczerbiak and the rest. So it should be exciting to watch, but that's a little bit of a different opinion. And is the tank worth Andre Karolinko? Just asking. Not sure I buy the tank. It's Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. We now set sports channel. It's called Locked On Sports Today. If you're on audio, check out the Big 6 in 60, the 6 biggest stories in just 60 minutes from the local experts of Locked On.